A millionaire pretending to be poor decides to work in her own restaurant and ends up falling in love with a waiter, but when she meets his family, she is speechless at what she discovers. Olivia Sinclair watched the city of Newport from her luxurious penthouse, feeling an emptiness that all the money in the world couldn't fill. At 32, she had everything money could buy, but something was missing. Closing her eyes, she remembered her childhood. Grace, the housekeeper, had always been there, caring for her lovingly after her mother's death. Olivia saw Grace's kind face, feeling her comforting embrace. But then, the memory shifted. Olivia, now a teenager, yelling at Grace over a poorly ironed dress. The pained expression on the housekeeper's face was painful to remember. "I've become just like my father," Olivia murmured to herself, recalling William Sinclair, always demanding and never satisfied. That night, while dining alone in her enormous apartment, Olivia made a crazy decision. She would find out what it was like to live a normal life, away from the spotlight and expectations. The next day, Olivia was unrecognizable dressed as a waitress. Simple clothes replaced her expensive suits. Looking in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Perfect. With her heart pounding, Olivia now lived more entered Seaside Bistro, a charming seaside restaurant she had secretly bought weeks before. "Welcome to Seaside Bistro," said the manager, Mark. "You must be the new waitress. Let's start your training." The next few hours were a whirlwind. Olivia, who had never worked a day in her life, was now learning to use a coffee machine, take orders, and balance plates. "Hey, watch out," someone shouted as Olivia nearly dropped a stack of dishes. Red with embarrassment, she apologized. This was much harder than she had imagined. Her hands, always so well cared for, were now rough and sore. At the end of her first shift, Olivia was exhausted. Her feet hurt, and she had food stains on her apron. But, strangely, she felt more alive than ever. Returning to the small apartment she had rented to maintain her disguise, Olivia collapsed on the bed. She thought of Grace, how the housekeeper did this kind of hard work every day, yet always had a smile on her face. How could I have been so blind? Olivia wondered, feeling a mix of shame and regret. In the days that followed, Olivia continued her new life as Liv. Each day brought new challenges and learnings. She learned to smile at grumpy customers, work as a team with her colleagues, and find satisfaction in small victories. One night, while cleaning the tables after closing, Olivia caught her reflection in the window. Her face was tired, but her eyes sparkled in a way she had never seen before. For the first time in years, she felt happy. But happiness came with a price. The more Olivia clung to her new life, the guiltier she felt about her years of arrogance and mistreatment, especially towards Grace. One day, she promised herself, "I'll make things right. I'll show Grace how grateful I am for everything she's done." Little did Olivia know that her journey of self-discovery was just beginning, and that fate had plans that would test her new perspective on life in ways she could never imagine. The doorbell of Seaside Bistro tinkled, announcing the arrival of another staff member for the morning shift. Olivia, now accustomed to the routine after a few weeks, lifted her eyes from her task of cleaning the cutlery. That's when she saw him for the first time. Tall, with tousled brown hair and a smile that lit up his entire face, the new waiter entered the restaurant like a ray of sunshine. "Folks, this is Ethan Foster," Mark, the manager, announced. "He'll be joining our team starting today." Ethan greeted everyone with a friendly nod, his green eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. When his gaze met Olivia's, she felt a strange sensation in her stomach, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. "Hi, I'm Ethan," he said, extending his hand to Olivia. "And you are?" "Liv," she replied, almost forgetting her fake name. "Liv Moore." In the days that followed, Olivia found herself watching Ethan often. He had a special way of dealing with customers, always ready with a joke or a kind word. Even the grumpiest customers left smiling after being served by him. One particularly busy afternoon, Olivia was struggling to balance a tray full of dishes when Ethan appeared at her side. "Need a hand, Liv?" he asked with a smile. Before she could respond, he took half the dishes, easing her burden. Working together, they quickly served the table. "Thank you," Olivia said, feeling grateful and a bit embarrassed. "I'm still learning." "Hey, we all start somewhere," Ethan replied with a carefree shrug. "You're doing well." Those simple words of encouragement meant more to Olivia than any praise she had ever received in her previous life. Over the weeks, Olivia and Ethan became close friends. During breaks, they shared stories and laughter. Olivia made up stories about her life, feeling guilty for lying, yet amazed at how easily she conversed with Ethan. One day, while cleaning the restaurant after closing, Ethan asked, "So, Liv, what made you decide to work here?" Olivia hesitated, carefully considering her answer. I wanted a change. My life before was very different, and I realized I wasn't happy." Ethan nodded, understanding. "I get that. Sometimes it takes courage to make a change." Olivia felt a lump in her throat. If only he knew the truth. As the days turned into weeks, Olivia found herself questioning her former values more and more. The simplicity and authenticity of her new life, especially her interactions with Ethan, made her old world seem empty and meaningless. One evening, after a particularly tough shift, the team decided to go for a beer together. Sitting next to Ethan at the local bar, Olivia felt more at home than she ever had at any gala or charity event. Ethan was telling a funny story about a demanding customer, and Olivia couldn't stop laughing. Her laughter was genuine, not the polite, restrained laughter she was used to giving at social events. Looking around the table at the smiling faces of her co-workers, Olivia felt a wave of affection. These people, whom she had barely known a few weeks ago, already meant more to her than many of her former friends. And then there was Ethan. His easy smile, his natural kindness, the way he made everyone around him feel special. Olivia realized she was developing feelings for him, something that both scared and excited her. As they walked home that night, Ethan and Olivia lagged behind the group. Under the starry sky of Newport, with the sound of the waves in the background, Olivia felt a peace she had never experienced before. "You know, Liv," Ethan said softly, "I'm really glad I met you. You're very special and I'm happy working with you." Olivia felt her heart race. "Thank you, Ethan. That means a lot to me." In that moment, looking at Ethan under the moonlight, Olivia knew her life would never be the same. She was falling in love, not just with Ethan, but with the person she was becoming. But in the back of her mind, a persistent voice reminded her that all this was based on a lie. How long could she maintain this facade before everything fell apart? Olivia's heart pounded as she followed Ethan down the quiet street. He had invited her to dinner at his home, to meet his family. The idea made her both nervous and excited. "Here we are," Ethan said, stopping in front of a modest but well-kept house. "It's not much, but it's our home." Olivia smiled, feeling a twinge of guilt as she thought of her luxurious penthouse. "It's lovely, Ethan." They entered, and the smell of homemade food filled the air. Olivia heard a familiar voice coming from the kitchen, a voice she had known since childhood. "Ethan, dear, is that you?" Olivia's world stopped when Grace, the housekeeper who had raised her, appeared in the room. Grace's eyes widened in shock at seeing Olivia, but she quickly composed herself. "Mom, this is Liv," Ethan introduced, oblivious to the tension in the air. "Liv, this is my mother, Grace." Olivia stood frozen, her mind spinning. Grace was Ethan's mother? How had she never known this? Grace smiled, though Olivia could see the effort in her eyes. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Liv." Dinner was a surreal experience for Olivia. Sitting at the table with Ethan and Grace, she felt transported back in time. Memories flooded her mind. Grace reading stories to her before bed, drying her tears after nightmares, teaching her to tie her shoes. Grace's endless kindness, always there, always patient. But then, the memories shifted. Olivia, now a teenager, yelling at Grace over a dress that wasn't to her liking. Grace, with tears in her eyes, apologizing over and over. Adult Olivia, ignoring Grace in the halls of the Sinclair mansion, treating her as if she were invisible. The hurt look in Grace's eyes, the pain Olivia chose not to see. "Liv? Are you all right?" Ethan's voice brought her back to the present. "Yes, sorry. I was just thinking about something." Grace watched her with a look that mixed concern and something else, hurt. Disappointment? After dinner, while Ethan was washing the dishes, Olivia offered to help Grace put away the plates. Alone in the kitchen, the silence was deafening. "Why are you here?" "Olivia?" Grace whispered, using her real name. Olivia felt tears well up in her eyes. I didn't know." "Grace, I swear, I didn't know Ethan was your son." Grace sighed deeply. "What do you want, Olivia? Why are you pretending to be someone else?" "I wanted to change, Grace. I realized how awful I've been, how much I've hurt people, how much I've hurt you." Grace's gaze softened slightly. "You've hurt a lot, yes. But I see you trying to change. I just hope it's not too late." Before Olivia could respond, Ethan returned to the kitchen. "What are you two whispering about?" "Oh, just telling Liv some embarrassing stories about you when you were a kid," Grace improvised, smiling. Ethan laughed, but Olivia noticed a shadow pass over his eyes. "Mom, please, not the stories of me crying because you went to work." Grace touched Ethan's arm affectionately. "You were a sensitive boy, dear." Olivia felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. How many times had Grace had to leave her own son to take care of her, the spoiled Olivia Sinclair? Later, as they prepared to leave, Ethan shared more about his childhood. "It wasn't easy, you know? Mom worked so hard. Many times she came home crying. That family she worked for, the Sinclairs, they treated her so poorly sometimes." Olivia felt as if she couldn't breathe. She was the reason Ethan grew up watching his mother cry. "But Mom was always strong," Ethan continued. "She did everything to give me a good life. I admire her so much for that." On the way back home, Olivia fought back tears. She had caused so much pain, so much hurt. And now, she was falling in love with the son of the woman she had mistreated for years. Arriving at her small apartment, Olivia finally let the tears fall. She cried for grace, for Ethan, for all the years lost in arrogance and selfishness. That night, lying in bed, Olivia made a decision. She would make things right. Somehow, she would make amends with grace, be worthy of Ethan's love, and become the person she should have been all these years. But a voice in the back of her mind reminded her, how long could she keep this secret? And what would happen when Ethan found out the truth? With these questions weighing on her mind, Olivia fell asleep, dreaming of a different life, a life where she could fix all the mistakes of the past. The following weeks were a whirlwind of emotions for Olivia. On one hand, her relationship with Ethan was blossoming in a way she had never experienced before. On the other, the weight of her secret became increasingly heavy. One sunny morning, Ethan surprised Olivia before their shift at Seaside Bistro. "Hey, Liv. How about a walk on the beach after work?" His smile was contagious, and Olivia couldn't help but smile back. "Sure, I'd love to." During the shift, Olivia found herself glancing at Ethan more often, admiring how he moved gracefully between the tables, always with a genuine smile for the customers. Finally, the shift ended, and they headed to the beach. Walking barefoot on the sand, with the sound of the waves in the background, Olivia felt a peace she had never experienced before. "You know, Liv," Ethan began, his voice soft, "I've never met anyone like you before. You're different." Olivia's heart raced. "Different how?" "You have this depth. Like you've lived much more than your age suggests." If he only knew, thought Olivia. Guilt ate away at her from the inside. Ethan stopped, turning to face her. His green eyes shone with an intensity that made Olivia catch her breath. "Liv, I think I'm falling for you." In that moment, the world seemed to stop. Olivia knew she should tell the truth, reveal who she really was. But the fear of losing Ethan, of losing this new life she had built, paralyzed her. Instead, she leaned in and kissed him. It was sweet, tender, and perfect. When they parted, Ethan was grinning from ear to ear. "I guess that answers my unspoken question," he joked. In the days that followed, Olivia found herself torn between the euphoria of her new love and the crushing weight of her lie. Each moment with Ethan was precious, filled with laughter, deep conversations, and small acts of affection. One night, while they were dining at Olivia's small apartment, Ethan noticed a distant expression on her face. "Hey, are you okay? You seem a million miles away." Olivia forced a smile. "Just thinking." "Ethan, have you ever wondered what it would be like to have a completely different life?" Ethan pondered for a moment. "Sometimes. But you know what? I'm happy with the life I have now. Especially since you came into it." His words, though sweet, were like daggers to Olivia's heart. She was living a lie, and the deeper their relationship grew, the harder it would be to reveal the truth. On another occasion, while walking hand in hand through the park, Ethan commented on the expensive watch Olivia wore, one of the few luxury items she hadn't managed to part with. "Wow, Liv, that watch looks expensive. A family gift?" Olivia hesitated, her heart racing. "Yes, something like that. I'd prefer not to talk about it." Ethan looked at her curiously, but didn't press. "All right, we all have our secrets, don't we?" If only he knew how deep her secret went. As the days passed, Olivia noticed small changes in herself. She laughed more easily, smiled more often. Her heart warmed every time she saw Ethan. But along with this happiness came a growing fear. One night, Alone in her apartment, Olivia looked at herself in the mirror. Who was she now? Olivia Sinclair or Liv Moore? The two identities seemed to merge and separate, leaving her confused and scared. She picked up her phone, almost calling Grace. She wanted advice, wanted to confess everything. But at the last moment, she backed out. What would Grace think of her? What would Ethan think? The sound of a message pulled her from her thoughts. It was Ethan. Good night, beautiful. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Olivia smiled, feeling a mix of joy and guilt. She was truly in love, for the first time in her life. But this happiness was built on a foundation of lies. Lying in bed that night, Olivia made a promise to herself. She would find a way to tell Ethan the truth. He deserved to know who she really was. But the fear of what might happen, of losing not just Ethan but this entire new life she had built, kept her awake. The love that was blossoming between them was real, of that she was certain. But would it be strong enough to survive the truth? With these tumultuous thoughts, Olivia finally fell asleep, dreaming of a future where she could be completely honest with Ethan, where there were no secrets between them. A future that, she feared, might never become a reality. Seaside Bistro was bustling that Saturday afternoon when a middle-aged man entered, his eyes scanning the restaurant as if searching for someone. Olivia, busy serving a table, barely noticed his presence. It was the sound of a tray dropping that caught her attention. Turning around, she saw Ethan standing, pale as a ghost, staring at the newcomer. "Dad?" Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. The man stepped forward, a hesitant smile on his face. "Hello, son. It's been a while." The restaurant fell silent, all eyes turned to the unfolding drama. Olivia felt her heart squeeze at the sight of the shock and pain on Ethan's face. "What are you doing here?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling with emotion. Marcus, Ethan's absent father, seemed uncomfortable under the stairs. I came to see you and your mother. Can we talk somewhere more private?" Ethan hesitated, looking to Olivia for support. She nodded encouragingly. "Go ahead. I'll handle things here." Reluctantly, Ethan left with his father, leaving the restaurant in a buzz of whispers and speculations. Olivia could hardly concentrate on her work, worried about Ethan. Hours later, when the shift ended, Ethan returned. His eyes were red, and he looked as if he had aged years in just a few hours. "Ethan?" Olivia approached cautiously. "Are you okay?" He shook his head, pulling her into a tight hug. "My dad, he has another family. Children. A whole life that didn't include us." Olivia felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. "Oh, Ethan, I'm so sorry." They sat at an empty table, and Ethan poured out his heart. Marcus had left when Ethan was just a boy, promising to return. But the years passed, and he never came back. Now, he was back, with a story of another wife, other children, a parallel life he had built while Grace and Ethan struggled to survive. How could he do this to us, Liv? How can someone just abandon their family and start another? Ethan's words struck Olivia deeply. She thought about her own facade, how she was living a double life, much like Marcus. Guilt consumed her. Sometimes, people make mistakes, Ethan. Terrible mistakes that hurt those we love. Ethan looked at her, his eyes filled with pain. "Do you think I should forgive him?" Olivia hesitated. "I can't tell you what to do, Ethan. But I think you need to consider what's best for you and your mother. My mother, Ethan whispered. You should have seen her face when he showed up at our home. It was as if all those years of pain came rushing back at once. That night, as Olivia reflected on the day's events, she couldn't help but see the parallels between her situation and Marcus's. Both were living lies, hiding their true identities from the people they loved. The difference, she told herself, was that she was trying to be a better person. But even that justification rang hollow to her own ears. With a heavy sigh, Olivia realized her time was running out. If she didn't tell the truth soon, she risked losing Ethan forever, just as Marcus had lost the chance to be a true father. Marcus's return had unearthed painful truths and long-buried secrets. Now, it was up to everyone to deal with the consequences and decide which path to take from here on. The day dawned gray in Newport, as if the sky reflected the whirlwind of emotions that Olivia faced. She had barely slept, thinking about Ethan, Marcus, and her own secret that threatened to unravel everything. Arriving at Seaside Bistro, Olivia noticed something different. A luxurious car parked in front of the restaurant caught her attention. Her heart raced as she recognized the driver. It was her father, William Sinclair's chauffeur. Before she could react, the restaurant door swung open violently. William Sinclair, imposing in his expensive suit, stormed out, his eyes instantly finding Olivia's. Olivia! His voice thundered, making everyone in the restaurant turn around. What is this charade? Olivia felt her blood turn cold. Her disguise had been discovered. Dad, I can explain, she began, but William interrupted her. Explain? Explain how my daughter, the Sinclair heiress, is debasing herself by working as a waitress? He spat out the last word with disdain. Ethan, who had just arrived, watched the scene in confusion. Liv? What's happening? William turned to Ethan, his eyes sparking with anger. Ah, so it's because of this, boy? No, Dad, it's not that. Olivia tried to intervene, but it was too late. Enough of this farce, Olivia. You're coming home right now, and this place, he gestured dismissively at Seaside Bistro, will be closed down immediately. The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. The restaurant staff exchanged worried glances, while Ethan continued to stare at Olivia, his confusion slowly turning into understanding and then into hurt. Liv, or should I say, Olivia. Ethan's voice was laden with disappointment. Who are you really? Olivia felt tears burn in her eyes. Everything was falling apart around her. Ethan, please, let me explain, she pleaded. But William wouldn't give her that chance. There's nothing to explain. Olivia, get in the car. Now. At that moment, something inside Olivia rebelled. Years of submitting to her father's will, years of pretending to be someone she wasn't, all culminated in this instant. No, she said, her voice firm despite her tears. I'm not going, Dad. William looked at her, astonished. What? I said no. This place, these people, they're important to me. More than you can imagine. Don't be ridiculous, Olivia. You don't belong in this world. And which world do I belong to, Dad? To a world of empty parties and superficial people? I've found something real here. Something that money can't buy. Ethan watched the standoff, his emotions clearly conflicted. He was hurt by the lie, but something in Olivia's determination touched him. William, realizing he couldn't easily bend his daughter, changed tactics. Very well, Olivia. Want to play plebeian? Stay. But know that I'll cut off all your access to the family accounts. And as for this place, he looked around with disdain, I have ways to ensure it closes its doors within a week. The threat loomed in the air, heavy and real. Olivia knew her father had the power to follow through. You can't do that, she protested. I can and I will. Unless you come home now. The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes were on Olivia, waiting for her decision. She looked at Ethan, her heart breaking to see the hurt in his eyes. She looked at her co-workers, people who had become her family in recent months. And then, she looked at her father, the man who had always controlled her life. With a deep sigh, Olivia made her choice. No, Dad. I'm staying. Do what you will, but I won't give up the life I've built. William stared at her, surprised by his daughter's resolve. Without saying another word, he turned and left, slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed was broken by Ethan. I think you owe us some explanations, Olivia. She nodded, knowing that the moment of truth had come. With a heavy heart, but determined, Olivia prepared to reveal everything, hoping it wasn't too late to save what she had built, especially her relationship with Ethan. Seaside Bistro was enveloped in tense silence after William Sinclair's dramatic departure. Olivia, still trembling from the confrontation with her father, faced the shocked expressions of her co-workers and Ethan's hurt gaze. I'm sorry, Olivia began, her voice barely more than a whisper. I know I owe explanations to all of you. At that moment, the restaurant door opened, and Grace entered, her face a mask of concern. Ethan? What's happening? I saw Mr. Sinclair's car. She stopped upon seeing Olivia, comprehension dawning in her eyes. Oh, Olivia. The air grew even heavier with Grace's arrival. Olivia felt the weight of years of regret and shame crash down on her. Grace, Olivia started, but the words failed her. Ethan looked from his mother to Olivia, confusion evident on his face. You know each other? Mom, what's happening? Grace sighed deeply. Ethan, dear, this is Olivia Sinclair, the daughter of the man I've worked for all these years. The revelation hit like a bombshell. Ethan staggered back as if punched. You're a Sinclair? All this time? Olivia felt tears burn her eyes. Ethan, please, let me explain. But Ethan was already distancing himself, his hurt and anger evident in every line of his body. Explain what? How you lied to all of us. How you pretended to be someone you're not. Grace placed a hand on her son's shoulder, trying to calm him. Ethan, maybe we should hear what Olivia has to say. Olivia looked at Grace with gratitude, surprised by the kindness in her voice. Taking a deep breath, she began to tell her story. She spoke about her privileged, yet empty life. About how she had treated Grace and other employees over the years. Tears streamed down her face as she admitted her past mistakes. I was a horrible person, Olivia confessed. Arrogant, spoiled, blind to what really matters in life. Then, she talked about her decision to change, to experience a different life. About how working at Seaside Bistro had opened her eyes to a world she had never known. I found a family here, she said, looking at her co-workers. True friends. And she looked at Ethan, real love for the first time in my life. As Olivia spoke, flashbacks of her previous life contrasted vividly with her recent experiences. The old Olivia, cold and distant, disappeared before the new Olivia, full of compassion and humility. Ethan listened, his expression a mix of conflicting emotions. He struggled to reconcile the Liv he had learned to love with the Olivia Sinclair he had always despised from afar. Grace, meanwhile, watched Olivia with a softened expression. Years of hurt and resentment seemed to melt away in the face of the young woman's evident sincerity. At that moment, the restaurant door opened again, and Marcus entered hesitantly. The already tense atmosphere grew even more charged with his arrival. "Sorry, I didn't realize something was going on," he said, looking from Ethan to Grace. Ethan laughed bitterly. "Well, it seems today is a day for big revelations." Marcus stepped forward, his expression pleading. "Ethan, Grace, I know I've caused you a lot of pain. But I'm here to try and make things right, if you'll give me a chance." The silence that followed was deafening. So many emotions, so many painful truths exposed at once. The air in Seaside Bistro seemed heavy with revealed secrets and broken hearts. Olivia looked around, at the faces that had become so dear to her over the past months. The hurt in Ethan's eyes, the conflicted expression on Grace's face, the desperate hope on Marcus's face. And her co-workers, watching everything with a mix of shock and concern. She knew she was at a turning point. Every word, every action from that moment could seal her fate and that of everyone around her. The future she had started to dream of, a simple life filled with love and purpose, seemed to be slipping through her fingers. As the sun set outside, casting long shadows through the restaurant windows, Olivia found herself facing an impossible choice. Return to her old life of privilege, but devoid of meaning? Or fight for this new life, knowing she might lose everything and everyone she had come to love? Seaside Bistro was closed to customers that night, but the restaurant was far from empty. Olivia had called a meeting, inviting all the staff, the Foster family, and, surprisingly, her own father, William Sinclair. The air was thick with tension as everyone gathered, curious and apprehensive eyes fixed on Olivia, who stood at the center of the restaurant. She took a deep breath, gathering the courage for what she was about to say. "Thank you all for coming," Olivia began, her voice trembling slightly. "I know many of you are hurt and confused by everything that's happened. I'm here to explain and, more importantly, to ask for forgiveness." She looked directly at Ethan and Grace, who were sitting together, their faces a mixture of conflicting emotions. "When I came to work here, I was running away from a life that didn't satisfy me. But what I found was much more than I expected. I found a family, true friendships, and—" She hesitated, looking at Ethan, "a love I never thought possible." At that moment, the restaurant door burst open, and William Sinclair entered, his face a mask of contained fury. Olivia paused for a moment, surprised by her father's arrival, but quickly continued, her voice gaining strength. "Dad, I'm glad you came. Because what I have to say is for you too." William crossed his arms, his expression defiant. "I've made many mistakes," Olivia continued. "I was arrogant, selfish, and blind to what really matters in life. But here, in this restaurant, with these people, I learned the value of hard work, compassion, and authenticity." She turned to Grace. "Grace, I apologize for all the years I treated you poorly. You cared for me like a mother, and I repaid you with ingratitude. I hope one day you can forgive me." Grace nodded silently, tears in her eyes. Olivia then addressed the restaurant staff. "You welcomed me without knowing who I was. You taught me, laughed with me, treated me like family. I'm sorry for lying, but know that every moment I spent with you was genuine. Finally, she looked at Ethan. Ethan, Her voice faltered. I fell in love with you as Liv, but it's as Olivia that I want to build a future, if you'll give me a chance. William Sinclair could no longer hold back. Enough of this nonsense, Olivia. You're coming home now and ending this ridiculous charade. Olivia turned to her father, her stance firm. No, Dad. I'm willing to give up my inheritance if I have to, but I won't give up this life I've built, this family I've found. William's face turned red with anger. You can't be serious. All this for a waiter and a rundown restaurant? No, Dad, Olivia replied calmly. For myself. For the person I want to be. William looked around, as if seeking support, but found only resolute faces. With a frustrated growl, he turned to leave. Do what you want, Olivia. I no longer have a daughter. The door slammed behind him, leaving a heavy silence in the restaurant. Olivia felt tears well up in her eyes, but she remained resolute. I understand if some of you can't forgive me. But I promise that from now on, I will always be honest and do my best to make amends for the harm I've caused. The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Then, to everyone's surprise, it was Marcus who spoke first. I know what it's like to make mistakes and want a second chance, he said, looking at Grace and Ethan. Maybe we can all learn something from Olivia's courage. Slowly, the restaurant staff began to nod, some even smiling at Olivia. Grace stood up and, in a gesture no one expected, hugged Olivia. Thank you, Grace whispered. For finally seeing. All eyes turned to Ethan. He had remained silent, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Slowly, he stood up and walked over to Olivia. You lied to me, he said softly. But you also showed me a courage I've never seen before. Olivia held her breath, her heart pounding furiously. I don't know if I can forgive everything at once, Ethan continued. But I'm willing to try. Day by day. A sob of relief escaped Olivia as Ethan pulled her into a hug. The restaurant erupted in applause and a few tears. As the sun set outside, casting a golden glow through the windows of Seaside Bistro, Olivia knew this was just the beginning. There was much to be fixed, much to be rebuilt. But for the first time in her life, she was truly ready for the challenge. The dawn in Newport brought with it the promise of a new day, and for Olivia Sinclair, it marked the beginning of a new life. Weeks had passed since the emotional meeting at Seaside Bistro, and the air still vibrated with the changes that had followed. Olivia woke up early, as she had become accustomed to doing since she started working at the restaurant. But now, instead of the small rented apartment, she found herself in a modest flat she shared with Ethan. The transition had not been easy, but each day brought with it small victories. At Seaside Bistro, Olivia now worked not only as a waitress but also helped with management. Her business knowledge, previously used only for parties and social events, was now directed toward improving the restaurant she had grown to love. Good morning, everyone. Olivia greeted the team as she entered the restaurant. The smiles she received in return were genuine, though there were still moments of occasional hesitation. Mark, the manager, approached with a stack of papers. Olivia, we need to review these numbers. The changes you suggested to the menu are really making a difference. Olivia smiled, feeling a wave of pride. It was gratifying to see the positive impact she could have when using her talents for the benefit of others. While she worked, Olivia couldn't help but notice how her relationship with her colleagues had changed. There was no longer the invisible barrier of lies between them. Now, they shared stories, laughs, and sometimes even confidences. In the middle of the morning, Grace entered the restaurant. Her relationship with Olivia had transformed over the past weeks, evolving from years of resentment to mutual understanding and, slowly, to something resembling friendship. "Good morning, Olivia," Grace said with a warm smile. "I was wondering if you and Ethan would like to have dinner with us this weekend. Marcus, he's trying, you know?" Olivia nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. The Foster family was slowly reconnecting, and she felt honored to be part of that process. "We would love to, Grace." "Thank you." In the afternoon, Ethan arrived for his shift. His eyes lit up when he saw Olivia, and she felt her heart race. Their relationship was being rebuilt, brick by brick, on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. "Hey, you," Ethan said, giving her a soft kiss. "How's the day going?" "Busy, but good," Olivia replied. "Oh, and we're having dinner with your parents this weekend." Ethan hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "That'll be good. It's weird having my dad around after so long, but I'm trying to give it a chance." Olivia squeezed his hand in support. She understood well the challenge of reconciling the past with the present. At the end of the day, as they were closing the restaurant, Olivia received an unexpected call. It was her father, William Sinclair. "Olivia," his voice sounded tired over the phone. I wanted to know how you are." The surprise left her momentarily speechless. "I'm well, Dad. Really well." There was a pause on the other side of the line. "I'm glad to hear that. Maybe we can meet someday to talk." "I would like that," Olivia responded, feeling a mix of hope and apprehension. After hanging up, Olivia shared the news with Ethan. He embraced her, offering silent support. That evening, walking hand in hand along the beach with Ethan, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a pampered heiress to a woman who had found purpose and true love. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked, noticing her distant gaze. Olivia smiled, squeezing his hand. "About how life can surprise us. About how sometimes we need to lose ourselves to find ourselves." Ethan nodded, understanding. "And about how love can help us rediscover who we really are." As the sun set on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange, Olivia felt a peace she had never experienced before. She knew the path ahead would not be easy. There was still much to learn, much to repair. But there, with the sea breeze on her face and Ethan's hand in hers, Olivia Sinclair, not just the Sinclair heiress, but a woman who had found her own identity, was ready to face any challenge the future might bring. Seaside Bistro, once just a disguise, now symbolized her transformation. And the people she had met there, Ethan, Grace, her co-workers, were the family she had always wished for but never knew she needed. As the stars began to dot the night sky, Olivia made a silent promise to herself to live each day with authenticity, gratitude, and love. Because now she knew that true wealth was not found in bank accounts or famous last names, but in the connections we form and the courage to be truly ourselves. If you enjoyed this story of transformation and rediscovery, don't forget to like this video and leave your comment below sharing your thoughts. Your interaction is very important to us. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, take this opportunity to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our inspiring content. Share this story with your friends and family so they can also be moved and inspired. Thank you for watching and for being part of our community.